Hello, beautiful people. Happy, gorgeous spring Monday. Hope you are enjoying the glorious blue skies and sunshine here in Asheville, if you're here. And this is our last 8th of 8th talk about raising self-aware teens. And I have the deep pleasure of sharing this moment and the last 7 Mondays at noon with Sarah Poet. And I would just love to take a minute and share my appreciations for Sarah.
Catching me off guard.
Yes. Sarah is one of the most open, honest, vulnerable, courageous human beings that I know. And it is such an honor to read her words on Facebook and to share conversation with her. Her words have so much wisdom, and she is really a marvelous human being and a wonderful teacher and a priestess and a goddess. And this woman has walked the walk, walks the walk. And if you get a chance to work with her, people, I would just say, do it. I've had a chance to work with her in couples therapy and doing individual work with her. And I just think she's marvelous. And I know so many people that have worked with you have just been amazed by the gifts that you have to offer, Sarah. And I just want to share that tribute to you in this space. I don't know that I know anyone that is more open and vulnerable and real publicly than you are. And you are a model for, particularly for teens who are, for them to be open and vulnerable and real in their lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was totally unexpected. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, someone the other day I was talking to, they were introducing me and they said, "This is Sarah, the principal turned priestess." And I was like, I'm going to use that. That's so funny. But that's what I am. And yeah, thank you for saying that. And, a lot of my work is with women and any human, but when I get to work with teens, which I love because we both have this deep career history and love and appreciation of working with teens. And I get to overlap the worlds, right? And so working with young women who are maybe experiencing something like with their fathers or with boys, and they're like, this isn't the new way. And we're like, no, it's not the new way, but you have to live the new way so that others learn the new way. And so, yeah, the young people are ready for the new way, and they are leading us in so many ways. So thank you for saying that. That's so sweet.
One of the reasons I like working with adolescents is that they are more ready actually than adults often,
for sure.
Because right, the layers of challenge haven't piled up on them as high, and their brain is still developing at such a rapid rate that new experiences have the capacity to transform them, and their minds are more open to transformation than adults are. And so I've always been drawn to kids, and particularly teens, as they're emerging into the world and figuring out who they are and who they're going to be in this world, and what an challenging, delicate, amazing time in one's lives. And
self-identity. I mean, it's like the time of identity. It's so cool. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. But they have to challenge. They have to push back. They have to be like, wait, is this right? And society, we've talked about it in this series, there's such a message of conformity. And I love that young people today, I think, are more nonconformist collectively. They're ready to shake things up and maybe break some molds. But to be that, I mean, we live in Asheville, North Carolina. And so, a kid can have pink hair or be bisexual or something like that. And it's I would say not as big of a deal as in other parts of the world. This geographic is generally more accepting. But it takes so much courage to be self-aware, and it takes so much courage to be an individual. And I think that's true, probably of any generation. We do have some people watching, and so I want to invite, if you have questions for Andrew and I, to pop them in the comments. I'm checking Facebook every once in a while. Yeah, so it's a challenge, but I think our kids are ready for it. I think they're ready for that individualism and uniqueness.
And, Aspire High drew a lot of nonconformists,
Yeah.
right? And my career for the last several years has been working with a lot of kids that are kind of outside the mainstream, which is fun and exciting. And there was really, I like to invite wise humans into the circle to share. So these teenagers can see all these different models of adults that are doing amazing things, including Sarah. I definitely wanted Sarah to come in, and she did come in.
Yeah, we talked
And there
about
was,
feminine and masculine. It was great. I have so much to learn from these young people.
yeah,
So much. Yeah.
yeah. And I had somebody come in, and afterwards I was debriefing with them, and they said, you're these students, these young people, they know what they're against, and they're against what they see in our systems. And what I want to encourage them is to figure out what they're for,
Yeah.
because being against is one thing, but being for is another. So there's nothing wrong with being a nonconformist. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't want to play by these rules. I don't like the game as it's set up. But the challenge, I think, is that energy is it's a negative energy. It's an against energy.
Yeah.
And to transmute that energy into what are you for, because it's what you're reaching to, right? It's the goals that you aspire to that will energize you in a positive sense. And so that is a deep message that I have for teens is, okay, I hear what you're against, because teens are against lots of
Yeah.
things: the rules of their parents, school, the inanity of our society on every level that they see it. And I said, well, what are you for? And how are you working to actualize what you're for? Because that will be the catalyst to you finding your unique gifts and sharing them with the world. So that's the kind of like the overarching message that I have for young people.
I love that. I'm
And
just going
for
to sit with that for a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
and for adults that are with young people, for parents that, I mean, teens are expert complainers. They're experts at identifying hypocrisy, and just, honoring that. That's where there are, and that judge is really a beautiful thing, because it's showing discernment, it's showing wisdom, and to to guide these people to the spot of, like, you are the king or queen, and that judge that judges the hypocrisy that you see in me as an adult in the society that you inhabit, give that counselor a seat at the table, because they have deep wisdom to share with you. But you are the king or queen. Take that counsel and decide what to do with it, and reach towards something positive, because only the king or queen that's reaching towards the good, the beautiful, the true, the where the life is, only that king or queen is going to really feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. And young people, I mean, just the age of adolescence, it's all about identity formation. It's all about like figuring out who you are in the midst of all of the things. And so yeah, the nonconformist and the rebellion, I deeply honor that. Oh my God, I was such a rebellious teen, right? But thank God, because yeah, like who wants conformity, right? But where was I going with that? It's such a steep climb for young people. It's like a steep climb for anyone to be authentic, right? You flattered me in the beginning talking about authenticity and vulnerability. And so, yeah, it's a steep climb to be true to yourself. Even like, though, later on you might change your mind, or later on you might be like, I was wrong back there, but you have this conviction or this, vulnerability and willingness to just figure it out in front of people. And so teens, we want to create spaces for them to know themselves. I mean, this is the whole thing we're talking about is self-aware teens. We want them to know themselves. We want them to know their own truths, like you're saying, not just in opposition, but like, what is my truth inside of me? Then how do we live that? What do we do with that? How do we become allies, advocates, for ourselves, for others, for other like populations of people, like how to do that. I mean, this is loads and loads of courageousness. Um, that, yeah, I think you and I both see that when we work with young people, and we have worked with young people in school, like when that spark, when that fire is lit inside of a young person, inside of a teenager, when they're like, I matter. I matter in the grand scheme of things. Most of our education is not built, most of our education in this country, and I would say, yeah, globally, is not built to really foster that identity formation. There's a lot of, just like check the boxes, take the tests, like, do the thing and get the degree. But there's not a like, who are you in that? Who are you in this place? Who are you in society? What do you care about? What are your passions? So if you have a young person that is kind of, I hate to use this word, but more or less stuck in something that's more conventional as far as education goes. And I know a lot of parents right now, they're just like, fuck, this isn't ideal, but what do I do? I'll say, finding groups where teens can be authentic might be difficult, might be easy where you live, but Andrew and I are available to do Zoom calls with your kids. And then they get this opportunity to be like fully authentic, fully themselves, which is a little bit more difficult with the parents, right? Because we have to discern like what's safe to tell our parents and what's not, and that kind of thing. But yeah, that you've talked a lot in this series about that safe adult where they really get to be themselves. And I'll pause there. Yeah.
I would love to do an identity series with you in person with teens. I think it would be amazing, where we are just really just creating space like we're doing here. But if you and I were in a circle sitting on opposite sides of the circle with a group of teens around us, opening this up with all the tools we have in our basket as educators, and frankly, the courage that we've shown in our lives in pursuing these things, not that we've figured it out, right? But we have lived with courage. I feel like both you and I have, in pursuing these things, and just opening that space for teens to do that kind of exploration, I think would be really powerful in terms of identity, in terms of emotional intelligence, in terms of sexual identity and sexuality in the world. I would so much enjoy that. And I think it would be really a needed, valuable service that would, I know, fill me with meaning to do and to facilitate.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. Me and my work, I do so much work online anymore, and then I'm like juggling the, working from home and being a mom, and as so many people are, and you're doing that, being a dad. So yeah, I respond to invitations. I'm like, if there's a demand, if there's a want and desire to create that space, it would be beautiful to be in a group of young people again. It's been a minute.
You like how I just put you on the spot on
You did. You did.
And I love how
really
you responded, like, I'm open, create the invitation, create it,
Yeah.
I'll come.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the space for authenticity is what I'm all about. So for sure.
If you were to give, I'll ask the question and then I'll answer it to give you time to think about it. If you were to give parented teens one piece of generalized advice, which of course generalized advice is of course a challenge, right? Because everything here depends upon the psychologies and the souls of the individuals involved, the parents and the children. But one piece of advice that might have wide applicability, all right? Ironically or paradoxically for me, it would be create a space where advice is not the primary thing that's being distilled, right? Where humbling oneself as a parent with your teen and creating space for them and honoring them and their story and where they're at, and acknowledging oneself as a fellow traveler who has lived longer and maybe has lessons and has learned lessons and has had experiences, but in the grand scheme of things, we are equals on this journey as human beings, and that your team may have as much to teach you as you have to teach them, if not more, because of the lack of calcification of many years of living in ways that are maybe less than totally authentic, because authenticity is an ongoing challenge in a world that in the world that is never really fully honored it, or as I guess it's always a challenge, I guess, to live with that. So the single piece of advice I would give is to humble oneself, to create space for an openness and an authenticity, and honoring the team where they're at, and so they feel that they are as valued, that their words, their wisdom, their ideas are as valued as yours, as the adult or parent in the situation.
Mm, I love that. Thank you. Single piece of advice. I often communicate through story and through lived experience. And so that's what's coming to mind right now. But I love that you said, Andrew, that these individuals are a unique soul. And I think I said it in one previous episode, but if I had my way with education, or if I created a school one day or something like that, I would make it actually soul based, or soul, you know, like discovery, right? Because we come with so much more information than is just in front of us, and there's a depth and an essence to each human that education is certainly not built on bringing that about. And then when we focus on performance, or what's our child going to be, or what is our child going to achieve, um, we we take the soul and the potential and the essence of the child, and we just like continually kind of knock it down a notch. Like, are you behaving? Are you conforming? Are you doing what you're supposed to do? So recently I've been looking at, well, I'll say my work in education was all relational, so like forming relationships with your child, with other people's teams, like the curiosity of what they think, like letting them really share with you their take on something. That's one of the coolest things about teenagers, is like the fresh perspective, and the impassioned perspective. Like teens are so impassioned, or should be. I'll use the word should. I rarely use that word, but I will say it's the nature of a teenager to be like impassioned and care about things. And so maybe it feels lofty or unrealistic. And I would say, like, give it space, like let that exist, right? Um, so recently in my son's life, and he's a tween, he's like not quite teen, he's 12. Um, he lives between two houses, and there's like mom's opinions and dad's opinions, and this child goes back and forth. And one of my friends, I was talking to a friend, and they were saying, like, in their life as a um, transsexual human, they have to code switch, like depending on the social circumstance that they're in. Like, if I'm around a bunch of like straight people, I have to code that way. But if I'm in my community, I have to code this way. And they said, I imagine that your child has to code switch between houses. And I was like, yes, holy shit. And I realized that, like, we have these codes, like, where I have my way of talking and thinking in my house, and his dad has his way of talking and thinking in his house. And this child has been between two houses since he was 5, so I'm kind of like thinking, he's littler then, right? Like the mom, dad, and a little person. And then so he's been going back and forth for all these years and learning that. But like, the thing is, he's no bigger, and he's not, I want him to have thoughts of his own. And so I realized that there was still this dynamic of like, he's the one that goes back and forth. I'm using my hands to talk about the energetics a little bit, where really it should be, like this, like he's this intelligent individual soul, who's going back and forth, and he doesn't need to conform to anything. Like, I don't want him to code switch. I want him to be him no matter where he is. And really kind of, you can see if if my hands, I talk with my hands about energetics so much, but like if he rises up to be that big individual, then like there's no shrinking anymore, or the expectation between houses, or when you go to school, or when you step into the social situations. You're just you the whole way through, like no matter where you are, and you're comfortable in that. So I'm not exactly sure that I directly answered your question, but I think adults fostering that individuality, independence, but the soul essence, like what matters to you? Why does it matter to you? How can I support that in you? Like, tell me what you think. I care what you think, rather than telling, like you were saying, rather than talking
I
to.
love this, and this, right? So many of our kids are in situations, well, even if parents are in the same house, right? But our
Yeah.
parents are in different houses, and they do this, and they do this in so many ways. And yeah, the job of the teenager is, if they're kids and they're here, the teen is like, okay, you're going to rise up and be an equal in
Yeah.
this, so that you have a deeper sense of self, and you can navigate this not as a subordinate, but as an equal. And that's going to be the task that evolves. That is the task of the teenager. And I think continuing to ask these questions of them, uh you know who are you, what do you want to be in the world. I had a talk about integrity with my son. He was breaking some rules and kind of bragging about it. And, I just said, look, question is like, who are you? Who do you want to be? Like, look, if you don't want to honor that rule, then stand up and be strong and say, I'm not going to honor that rule, and be willing to take the consequences of it. I said, look, if you don't like something enough, you can always refuse to eat, right? If it's that important to you, right? Just decide what's important to you and what you're willing to do about it. But sneaking around and not honoring the rules and it furthers this, right?
Mhm.
So stand up, be a strong young man, speak your piece, and the reality is that you are not economically independent in the world, and so you don't actually get to make all your own choices.
Mhm.
And you can speak your piece and then say, all right, what am I willing to do about this? And my chances are you're going to say, you know what, the rule is really not that bad. I'm gonna respect that rule. But if you choose not to respect that rule, then you're building a pattern of lack of integrity. If you choose not to honor that rule and not to address it in an adult way, then you're building a pattern of who you're going to be in the world. And that way that you're building is, I'm going to sneak around and try to get the things that I want in subversive ways when I feel like that's what needs to happen. And I want to encourage you to stand up, speak your truth, and honor that where you are in the world, right? And I would, the same thing with an employee with a boss, right? You got to learn to navigate those things. It doesn't go away once you become, an adult. You got to navigate situation after situation like this. And I just want you to I want to encourage you to be in integrity with yourself. And if being integrity with yourself means I tell a lie, then okay, like, but be in integrity with yourself, right? And that means having a sense of self that needs to be cultivated and developed, right? Because,
Mhm.
99 times out of 100, the path of lying and dishonesty and deceitfulness is not going to get you what you ultimately want. And that's regardless of the ethical or spiritual framework that you inhabit. And so that was a powerful, I could see that talk really hit home for him. And whether he adjusts his behavior now, well, something was planted in that moment. And we'll see what happens. And this task of development is ongoing. You got to
Yeah.
keep on this, right? As
Yeah.
long as you have the opportunity, right? As long as these kids are under your roof, or as long as they're still in relationship with you, there's opportunities that are present for us to cultivate their development. And what an incredible blessing as a parent or educator to get these opportunities with these young people to encourage and cultivate their sense of integrity, their sense of individuality, and who they are and who they're going to be in the world.
Mhm. Yeah, beautiful. I imagine that everyone right now could pause and think of the adult in their life as a young person, when they were a young person, the adult that said, like, I want to know who you are. I believe in you, you know, and it might be few and far between for some people. But you can feel how important it is for a teenager to have the adult that says, like, I get you. I want to know you. I want to support who you are. I'd like to give concrete tools for parents, maybe teachers watching. And one thing that can be used either in classrooms or in families is a meeting, a class meeting or a family meeting, and a couple of like super basic components that you do in those, like set time and place, right? So there's consistency. You start out with the gratitudes that are not performance based, right? So like gratitudes that are about the heart, soul, the character. And then anybody can bring up, we used to call them agenda items in schools. But if you were doing that with your son and you do this Sunday nights at the kitchen table, and he says, look, I don't like this rule, right? Like, that is such awesome parenting, to be like, here's your space, here's your forum, like, what do you want to bring up, what matters to you? And he says, well, this rule that you have, I don't like, and I'm having trouble not breaking it. Or I can think of, like, screens, or just any rule. Like, I want 40 minutes on the screen on Saturdays instead of 20. And then you talk about, like, well, here's what matters to me about that, here's what matters to me about that, and you hear each other, and they get practice in that, and they get practice saying, like, okay, we disagree, or okay, we can find a middle ground, or you just take it from there. But it's like a space where it can be on the table, right? And everybody can be heard. And then it's not just, I love what you said, because it's not just about complacency and power over, well, I'm the parent, so you have to listen to me. It's like, well, here's why that rule's in place, considering all of the things. Do you really want to be making the decision that you're making? And then they get to decide without shame, without that that shame and pressure of just like being good for the sake of being good. So I definitely love the meeting, the class meeting, the family meeting. And then the last point would be, like, you try a resolution for a week. Say, okay, well, we're going to give this a try. You think you can handle 40 minutes of screen time on Saturday? Let's give it a try. Let's see what it does for your attitude. I guess I'm talking like 10, 12-year-olds right now. I'm not really, but take the example and apply it to whatever. But you take the agreed upon solution and then apply it, but then come back to it and say, okay, like, how's everybody doing with this agreed upon solution? Do we need to tweak anything? And yeah, allow everyone to reflect, because these young people might be like, yeah, it's not working. I can't stay out until midnight and then get up and go to school in the morning. Like, oh yeah, okay, that rule makes sense, right? Like, there's just a dialogue instead of like laying down the rules for that rebellious nature to try to break them.
Yeah, anytime you can get young people to consent to the rule because they see the value of it, obviously, and that's what happens in a meeting, right? And I would often tell young people, because they're defiant often in the moment, and the defiance is not very well thought through because of where they're at developmentally. It's really just a selfish emotional impulse of like, I want this right now. I'm not even thinking about what's in my long-term best interest, but I want that thing right now, and so I'm gonna ask for it. And I would often have to, especially when I was with groups of teens, say, look, in this moment, I am in charge of the space and I need to make a decision. And I promise you right now, I'm trying to think about lots of things that you aren't even thinking about right now, right? And I'm going to ask you in this space to honor the decision that needs to be made. And if you really don't like it, I want you to come back to me, right? And then come back when you've deliberated upon it and say, hey, that thing that happened, I really don't think that was the right call. And this is why I don't think it's the right call. Or like this family meeting, hey, I know you made that call, mom or dad, but I really don't think that you made the right call in that moment. And teaching them those skills of, guess what? Sometimes your boss asks you to do something and you know what? You just need to do it right now. But to be in integrity, you maybe need to do some reflective work on that and come back when you're not emotionally charged and have a conversation with that boss about that, or with that parent about that. And how much more does the parent respect when the child says, okay, I'm going to do what you're asking me to do right now, and I want to bring this up at the family meeting and I want to talk about this, right? Because woof, I mean, if we can get our kids to develop those skills, like, man, we are making the world a better place, right? And it's really beautiful, self-empowering work for them to navigate these things. And again, just such an honor and a pleasure to be a part of the intricacies and the dynamics of cultivating self and cultivating individuality and cultivating individual sense of purpose that coheres and aligns with a collective vision for a better world, right? And a better community and a better household. And how do we navigate these things to be true to ourselves and have that truth, which I believe it always is, that truth in ourselves, if manifested and expressed, creates a better world. And it needs shaping and crafting and really, expert level adult guidance to happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I know that, I mean, there's so much waking up going on in the world. There's so many adults going, wow, this way that I've been, interacting or hustling at work or, ignoring my emotions, like isn't working anymore. Right. So we have a lot of adults realizing that. But I want to, just kind of put a call to action out there that we don't want these teens, we don't want our current generation of teens to have to comply, and then go through a period where, they go through college, they go through like, like the rat race, right? And then to find out like, oh, this wasn't working. Oh, I want to be my individual self, and do that soul searching that I think so many in this generation that like you and I are in, so many adults are waking up to say like, no, I want more of my authentic self. We need young people to start like that right now. I mean, this generation is being totally handed a world that needs a lot of innovation. And so this knowing of the self, this emotional intelligence, this character-based, conversational learning that we're talking about, we want young people to have these skills so that when they enter college, they can advocate for themselves. They can be the leaders. They can, start the clubs. They can advocate for change. They can lead the petitions, like whatever it needs to happen. Like I really strongly believe that we need to equip them now, younger. Like don't ignore this. We need to not ignore this. And foster that identity and that sense of, you matter and you're going to lead change.
And that's where these things that young people and all of us need to cultivate of discipline and dedication to our objectives, right? When the students themselves, when the young people create their own objectives, and then you're like, okay, well, what do you need to do to actualize that? Mm-hmm. Right? Well, as a teacher, I might say, okay, now do you see, I want to show you, see if you can see it, the value of developing your writing skills so that you can write good sentences and good paragraphs so that you can be the persuasive agent of change that you seek to be in the world. And if you can't compose words in a way that is going to be persuasive and powerful to people, then you're limiting yourself, right? You want to be this agent of change? Okay, what tools do you need to make that happen? And tell me what you're going to do today, what you commit to doing to this week to try to get there. In other words, instead of this is what society says I should be doing, and now I'm going to jump through a bunch of hoops, in a kind of, less than passionate way, because this is what other people are setting up for me. Honor these young people by letting them set their own goals, right? Let them set their own goals to the extent possible, and then encouraging them to actualize their own goals, right? And help give them the tools of accountability and reflection, self-reflection, to see how well they're doing towards progressing towards their own goals. And I think that's how young people at this age become really powerful, wise individuals, is giving them the space to find their own goals, and then encouraging them to work towards actualizing those goals, right? So anything self-directed is going to be, much more powerful than anything given from outside of oneself. And first one has to figure out, well, what is self-given here, right? Because a lot of us don't know, and a lot of young people don't know, but the sparks are in there. The sparks of passion are in there, and drawing those sparks of passion out and saying, I hear you wanting to do that. Is that what you're wanting to do? Yes, that's what I want to do. Okay, cool. Let's sit with that. And then let's dream about that. Let's imagine that. And then when the time gets right, okay, well, what do you need to do to get there? Do you need a college education for this? Okay, well then if you need to get into college, then maybe these classes are actually more important than you think, right? And that getting decent grades in high school is actually more important than you think towards actualizing the goals. These aren't things given to you by your parents or by society. These are things that you're saying you want. And the path to that, maybe it involves college, maybe it doesn't involve college, but again, helping them figure out what they want and need on their journeys.
I'm having a little bit of a nostalgic moment right now, because in the last school that I designed, we had each child had their own self-directed goals, and they met with a mentor every week. And the question was, what's just the next step? What's the next step in you achieving this, right? So they learned how to set these incremental steps and achievable goals for themselves. And it's like, if I want to return home, they were residential school, I want to return home and I want to go to college. It's like, okay, so that's your ultimate goal. What's the next incremental step? I love that. Andrew, it's so fun to be back in the space and talking about education and children with you. Thank you. You started by totally flattering me, and I'll just say again that Andrew Saldino is one of the best educators I've ever seen, and absolutely impassioned about this. And so you can contact him on the Aspire High website. Yes?
For sure.
I don't know why I haven't just memorized that, but it's in the post. So yeah, the Aspire High private mentorships are available, and you can contact me as well. But thank you everyone for tuning in to these 8 weeks of conversations between Andrew and I. We totally impassioned about this. I got some feedback that we make a good team.
I've heard that.
You
and
have
I
too?
feel that. And I leave every conversation on Monday, Sarah, more energized than when I started. And that to me is that's really beautiful. And so I really value these conversations, and it's been a deep pleasure, and I look forward to our next collaboration.
All right, you too. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.